we've got a reputation for preaching all the wrong verses and picking all the wrong topics to be a so-called attractional church. There have been no messages this summer on how to endure suffering and to find fulfillment in life, and how to start a business and get a Christian spouse and all that kind of stuff. We have spent the entire summer talking about outreach, one of the most disliked subjects that Christians can talk about, right? Like I said, right behind tithing is one of the least popular ones, because you're assuming that we're going to condemn you and make you feel bad and send you out and tell you to do embarrassing things. We're not, okay? We do believe, though, that outreach, that is evangelism, is extremely important to your Christian life. If you want to be a biblical Christian, not a cultural Christian, granted, but if you want to be the biblical variety, where when you open the Bible you see yourself there in a good way, you gotta pay attention to the component of evangelism in some kind of way. So we've covered all types of ways of handling evangelism. Everything from praying and probing and serving and everything else. Because the Christian life has got to be more than a mouthful of Jolly Ranchers. You know what I mean? Like, that green one, that's my favorite. And the red. Not the purple, though. The purple smell like feet. Doesn't it? So I'm not the only one. Okay, good. So what evangelism does is it gets you out of the realm of, oh, I enjoy this, into the realm of, yes, I enjoy this, and I've got a purpose for my Christian life bigger than me, bigger than my family, bigger than my plans. I'm a kingdom person. So what we'll do this morning is we're going to touch on an aspect of evangelism that could well be lost while we're studying this whole thing. And that is, as you are inviting people and starting those difficult conversations with folks and various things, you yourself might be invited to something non-Christian by non-Christians. You yourself might be invited. Now, I'm talking about to things like weddings and bachelor parties and bachelorette parties and get-togethers and cookouts and celebrations and holiday parties, office parties, things that some of us would prefer not to go to. Should you go? Now, this is a summer on evangelism, so you're going to say, well, he's going to say to go. But hold on. Some of us here in the room are social animals. We accept every invitation and we go to everything. We only have to ask three things. Will friends be there? Will food be there? Will fun be there? My answer is yes, yes, yes. I'm there. I don't even care what it is. I don't care what they're doing. I like hanging out. All right, good. That's good. Now, the downside of it is this. You may find yourself in compromising situations where you could be required or pressured to do some things you really shouldn't do. Some things that you will wake up the next morning and wish you hadn't done. That's the downside of casually accepting every invitation and going to everything. Now, some of the rest of us are not inclined, socially speaking. So, if somebody invites us, our first thought is, oh no, how long is this going to be? I'm looking at this little invitation. It's on Facebook or whatever. I'm looking at this, and it looks like that there's no ending to this. It's open-ended. And this sounds like energy. Now, really, on Monday, I accept every invitation, but by Friday, I'm exhausted, and me and my wife are discussing ways of getting out of it. What's an acceptable way to beg off of this thing? We're both exhausted. Or there's the awkwardness factor if you're an introvert, which actually that's a majority of all Christian churches are introverts. If you're introverted, you may just feel like, man, this is going to be very awkward. And okay, how many people are going to be there? I don't know. 60%? Give me a percentage. I want to see a guest list before I go, because I don't want to be off in a corner. It's awkward. So we find it very easy to mostly not go to things we're invited to. The downside of that is that you may miss opportunities to change people's lives that you will probably not ever in your life again have. So the question remains, should we go? I'm going to submit to you this morning that you should accept the invitation with wisdom. With wisdom. Go to the party with wisdom. I'm going to get you into some verses this morning. I'm going to take you to a verse that will show you how that Jesus went to parties. And I'm going to show you a couple of verses that will essentially help you not to be stupid when and if you do go. Okay? So first of all, I'd like to take you to Matthew chapter 9 and verse 11. Matthew chapter 9 and verse 11. Where is that in the church Bible? Huh? 693. Page 693 will bring you to Matthew 9:11. Okay. First part of my submitted proposal this morning, go to the party. Accept the invitation. All right, let's take a look at what Jesus did. Jesus apparently has gone to enough of these things in the Gospels that he's been noticed as being a person that does it. And so in Matthew 9:11, the Pharisees, that is the ancient religious experts of the day, noticed Jesus was going to a few too many happy times. When the Pharisees saw it, they said to his disciples, Jesus' disciples, because it seems like they never go challenge Jesus directly with these kind of questions. They like to ask his followers. They ask his disciples, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? Why does he do that? But when he, that is Jesus, heard it, he said, those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. All right, here's what to appreciate in these verses. First of all, Jesus did not say, well, wait a minute now. The party wasn't that bad. The party wasn't there wasn't that much alcohol. The people didn't get crazy. Nobody danced on a table. It would be a Jewishly approved feast. Actually, it's a contradiction in terms anyway. Jewish festivals were not people milling around with martinis in their hands, like politely, like, a scene from Mad Men or something where people would do that. But Jewish parties typically got loud and lots of laughing and lots of carrying on. And Jesus didn't say, well, this was a tame party. He didn't argue that way. You know what his reasoning was? Jesus understood himself a certain way. He went seeing himself in a certain way. How did he see himself? He's a doctor. I'm going as a doctor. I'm not going as a guy that's bored on a Friday night. I'm going as a doctor. And it's also conditioned about how he saw others. How did he see those tax collectors and sinners? As sick. Now, he also mentions some that thought that they were well. It says, those who are well have no need of a physician. Believe it or not, there are some people that feel like they're doing so well they don't need Jesus. Actually, they also are sick. They're just trying to pretend like that they're well. Everybody's sick. Compared to Jesus, everybody's sick. Even you. Me too. We're all in various stages of recovery, but we are by no means disease-free. This I can promise you. So Jesus, first of all, understood himself in a certain way and understood the people there in a certain way. Jesus thought of himself as a doctor, so when he goes to somebody's house, you know what he's actually doing? He's making a house call. He's making a house call. The doctor is making a house call. And you can be pretty much guaranteed that when he shows up at the party, he doesn't stand over in the corner with arms folded, disapproving of everything. Like, oh, I can't believe that he did that. Oh, look at that one. And could she wear less? Good grief. Could she wear less? He wasn't like Mr. Spock from Star Trek, lamenting how emotional these mortals are. There is a suggestion when you read through the Gospels that Jesus had a bedside manner that was out of this world. People just loved him. Sinners could talk to him, and in a couple of minutes they'd be opening up their life to him, saying all kinds of things. And then there is one example after another where he was able to say something to somebody that changed their whole world, the whole way that they thought about things. It is difficult to be in these situations and know what to do. You know, I recall some years back, there was this guy was a real party animal, non-Christian, and he took a liking to me. He just decided I like him. He was also really rough living, blue collar. It was a blue collar area of Cleveland. His birthday came up. He sent a message through his sister. All these people were in the church. He sent a message through them, I want John to come. When I heard it, I thought, I don't want to come. I don't want to come. I can guess what's going to happen. But also felt the great physician saying, you go. You go. Plus his sister, who was a very influential person in our church, said, you need to come. Okay, so I showed up. There he is at the door. The guy's at the door. He says, hi, John. Cloud of Budweiser. Face. You know, he's like 1 6-pack into the party already and hadn't even started yet. And I'm showing up. I didn't know what to do. You know, I wasn't that seasoned in full-time ministry or any of that. I was much younger. I remember just walking around with one beer in my hand all night long. It was as warm as chicken noodle soup and that thing. I just held it. Just walked around and I didn't know what to do. And this guy started following me around. Hey, John! You know, he was following me from room to room. What do I do? I don't even know what to do. Well, this will happen to you. This happens to me because we are not the great physician. You know, we don't show up at events and assume I'm the only healthy one here. I'm here at this wild party in case a Bible study breaks out. Got any questions about Leviticus? 27 chapters. No. In fact, I think that for the most part, when Jesus goes to these events in the Gospels and the disciples go with him, it should remind you of the chief attending physician walking around. He's the doctor. He's got his big white coat, and he's got all the little guys behind him, all the interns, running along behind him, watching what he does. And how will you, now what will you do? And he's checking charts and putting them down, and he walks away, and everybody else looks, what did he say? What did he say? You got LPNs and RNs and nurse practitioners, but there's only one chief doctor. You got interns there. Nobody knows what they're doing. They're all concurring with things because that sounds smart. Do you concur that he's got a broken leg? Well, as a white thing sticking out of his leg. So I would concur. This is us. Whenever we attend the chief physician to a house call, we're basically following him in there and learning from him on the spot. There's no books that you can read that will prepare you for this. It's on-the-job training. This will happen to you. Go expecting on-the-job training, but go. In principle, I got to tell you, accept invitations. Now, you can't go to everything, obviously, but try to have an attitude of, okay, I'll go. I'm not going to stay there all night, but I'll go. Try to be that way. You know, we went last night to the Foodie Festival in downtown Columbus. How many went to that? Just a little handful of you. I didn't get specifically invited to that. Like the city of Columbus didn't say, John, please come to our event. But you could say I was kind of blanket invited to go to it. And it was good to get down there and be reminded, this is what tens of thousands of people look like who show up at a non-faith event and do nothing but mill around. It's good to be reminded. Wow! And it's sometimes I felt like overwhelming feelings of, wow, these people need a doctor. You should go. Now, I'm going to balance this out. All right? You ready? Ready? I'm going to balance this out. As you go, be wise. I'm going to give you a couple of questions you need to ask yourself before you accept an invitation anywhere from anybody, even close friends. First of all, if I go, am I inadvertently reintroducing myself to a past addiction or temptation? Ask yourself this and be honest. Am I going to get myself in trouble, like big trouble, because they're going to be doing something there that tempted me in the past and got me in a lot of trouble? That may trump your principle of accepting invitations. It may well, and maybe it should. Matthew 26:41, which we'll go ahead and project. Jesus was very clear with the disciples. He says, watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. Now get this, he didn't say watch and pray that you don't enter into sin. He says watch and pray that you wouldn't even be tempted. Temptation itself is bad enough. Some have compared it, at least compared the expectation that, I'll be tempted, but I won't go the whole way. Some have compared that to thinking that I'll set a bale of hay on fire with a match, and it'll burn halfway through, and then suddenly, like magic, it will just go out. It won't go all the way. It will stop halfway through burning the hay, which is crazy. That's ridiculous. The devil means for temptation to go all the way. He means for it to. And some of the things that we have wrestled with, from addictive substances to bad behaviors to various things, we don't want to be involved in that. You don't want to re-involve yourself in it. Don't be a fool. Yes, I know, right here and right now in a Christian meeting, after you sung a couple of worship songs and we're reading the Bible and you're listening to a message, you're feeling like, well, I'm strong. It's not a problem. Yes, you're right. Your spirit is willing. But Jesus goes on to say, but the flesh is weak. Don't be a fool and be overconfident. Okay, that's the first question. So, will I reintroduce myself to addictions or past sins? Okay, here's the second one. By my going to these things, am I actually harmonizing or attempting to harmonize my Christian life with a life of sin? Am I, in fact, cultivating a double life? I've seen Christians do this. It's the funniest, oh, funny not, ha-ha, but it's the strangest thing. We threw a party for this one girl, and some of her friends came, and they had no idea she was a Christian. She had a different name with them. And they were confused, like, what's all this Bible stuff? And she had built a completely separate life apart from her faith. You can actually do this. The Apostle Paul tells us in 2 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 14, do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. For what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness? Or what fellowship has light with darkness? All right, listen, this is different than visiting a party or going to be somewhere with a friend at their invitation. This is pursuing a yoking with unbelievers. Like, hey, I want the purpose of my life to be the same as yours. Like two ox under a yoke plowing a field. I want to be yoked with you. Or this is like pursuing a partnership. Like, hey, whatever you do is what I do, man. Put her there. Yeah. Or this is seeking a fellowship. Where you're actually, this is deep now, we're actually we're allowing the sin that's in this person's heart to circulate up into yours. You want to be careful of that. Essentially, what happens when you try to yoke belief with unbelief, you know what you get? When you yoke belief with unbelief, you get an anemic faith. It's not really committed to much of anything. Or when you try to partner righteousness and lawlessness, you know what happens when that occurs? You try to put righteousness and lawlessness together. You get this casual approach to morality. Well, what's wrong with this and what's wrong with that? Or if you try to get light and darkness to fellowship together. When you mix light and dark, you know what you get? You get gray. Every day is an Ohio day. There are no brilliant extremes of Christian experience, nor is there satanic hopelessness, but something in the middle that's neither both. That's never both. That's never one or the other. It's sort of a mixture of both. Okay, so that's the second question you have to ask yourself. Am I building the double life here by accepting invitations left and right? And then the last question, you will want to ask, am I personally participating in sin? Or will I be required to personally participate in it? Years back, there was this Christian commentator, I think he was the president of the Center for Faith and Culture. His name's Dick Staub, whom I really liked. He talked about how that he was invited to a guy's birthday party, one of the guys in the office. I guess he was still in business world. And guy said, hey, I want to have a party at the office. And he said, yeah, sure, because he himself had built up a habit of accepting invitations for the sake of the gospel. Well, what he heard was it was first of all, a boys-only party, which should give you cause for concern, you know. And then secondly, they had hired gentlemen's entertainment. I won't say anything more than that. I think we all understand the loaded idea there. Gentlemen's entertainment. And he said, as soon as I heard that, he said, hey, gospel principle or not, I found someplace else to be that night. The Apostle Paul says, 1 Thessalonians 5:22, abstain from every form of evil. Don't sample every form of evil. Abstain from it. So basically, as you're asking yourself these three questions, note that there's this healthy fear of sin involved in all of it. Like, dude, I can't afford to be tied up in sin. Listen, I cannot state this strongly enough to you. If you're not afraid of sin, you're not qualified to go in and out of sinners' lives. You're not qualified. You're not qualified until you realize that the stakes are pretty high if you get into it. Think about it. Healthcare providers are the ones most scared of sickness. Now, they're right in the hospital on top of all the sick people. You know what they do? You know what they do the most? You're laughing because you're in public health, right? Okay. So there's a lot of hand washing and alcohol and stuff like rubbing alcohol and disinfectants and avoidance of body fluids and things of this nature. You know, because we know firsthand, as a healthcare provider, you know what will happen to you if you're not careful. You won't just be a person in recovery of sickness, you'll be in one of the beds. You don't want it. That's the reason why when you go, be smart, be wise. Ask yourself, why am I going to this and what are the stakes for me here? Remember, will I reintroduce myself? Am I harmonizing? Am I personally participating? That should trump your decision to go. Okay? Okay, so last of all, I'm going to leave you with this point. Go with a purpose. Never casually go someplace where you know that things are going to probably get rowdy. Never casually go there. Now, we go places, we're going to go have a good time, all right? You should go have a good time. People can tell when you're, like, unhappy in a social setting. And especially if you keep checking your watch and stuff like this, and, well, I'm bored, and I want out of here, or I hate this, or I feel uncomfortable. Everybody else feels that too. So, first of all, go with a purpose, but go have some fun, okay? But go with a purpose. I'm going to ask you to turn to Matthew chapter 11 really fast here. This is our last verse. Matthew chapter 11, verse 19. And there it says, now this is Jesus talking. He says, the Son of Man, which is Jesus, the Son of Man came eating and drinking. And they say, look at him, a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Yet wisdom is justified by her deeds. Take a closer look here. It's not that Jesus was overeating and getting drunk. He was a friend of those who were. It's a guilt by association type of thing. It was a guilt by association type of thing. And then Jesus says this, yet, okay, these people, they fault me for being friends, for being a doctor to the sick. They fault me for that. Yet, wisdom is justified by her deeds. Let me tell you how I justify this. First of all, this is divine wisdom. Believe it or not, it's divinely wise to go when a sinner asks you or invites you to a birthday party or some kind of celebration. Hey, I got a raise. You got to come to my cookout. It's divine wisdom for you to say, I'll be there. What can I bring? That's gamed out by God, that kind of thing. I tell you what, I am not a social creature. But when somebody says, will you come to my so-and-so? And I'm not talking about just people in the church. That's easy stuff. Like I got invited to a birthday party like a week and a half ago, so I went. And, not a big deal. There are people in the church, But, folks, I don't know. Or I hardly know. And I get caught up in invitations and the momentum of invitation, and I end up there. That is just the willingness to go is divine wisdom. Incredible but true. How do we know that this is divine wisdom? Jesus said, let me justify this for you. Let me justify my decision to go. First of all, he didn't say, I didn't drink that much. And besides that, the alcohol content of that wine, that's really cheap wine. I think alcohol content really, really low anyway. And there wasn't that much to eat. They had peanut butter. He didn't do that. Jesus says wisdom is justified what? By her deeds. Let's look at the outcome of my going to the party. You know what happened to some of these sinners? They repented of their sins and believed in him and followed him. They said sorry to God. They began to follow Jesus and to live a holy life. They came out of that. Jesus said, did you see that part? Did you see that part? That is what justifies my going. It really shows that Jesus was at these parties deep water trolling, man. He showed up. I think he was really pleasant and, and he was with people. People liked talking to him. People liked being around him and all this. And the whole time you could tell he was easy to be with, and he was there, and he was deep water trolling. He let those lures, he let that bait down really deep. And he was fishing deep while he was there. Jesus doesn't go to things just for whatever reason. He goes with a purpose. And I got to say, that's something that you need to do. You got to go with a purpose. Now, go have a good time. Eat all that Greek street food. They have porta potties there anyway. Eat all that Greek street food, and I went to Land Yacht Barbecue. Only have one of those sandwiches. Trust me when I tell you that, okay? Just one. Have a good time. But go also with the purpose. Here's what happened to me. I went assuming nothing would happen. In fact, I forgot that anything was supposed to happen. Yesterday, I was at Walmart. Of course, that wasn't an invitation. Yesterday, I was at Walmart, and then, bang, ministry happened. Actually, some guy invited me to come over to his table. So I ended up walking over to his table, and it's like 90 degrees yesterday in the heat of the day. I just felt like I was going to melt. And you know how you feel mad when you're hot? Wow, yesterday I was thinking, I do not feel like any kind of ministry right now. I feel like slapping somebody. It's terrible, right? But ministry came up, and I didn't even think it was ministry till later on. I thought, that was ministry. Wow. Just amazing. And then as we were leaving the food event yesterday, a guy approached us, ministry again. Well, it's good to have somewhere deep down inside of you a kind of setting for, I think I'm going to be used by God today. I'll bet you. I'm going to be used. Anytime I'm around people, I assume somewhere deep down inside, even if I forget, try to remember before you leave the house, I'm going to be around human beings. Probably I'm going to be called upon. You need to think that way. It's not just pastors that ought to think that way. Pastors are some of the worst people in the world to remember this. They think that, well, this is ministry. That out there, that's my time. So I want you to bust out your social calendar. Here's your takeaway. Bust out your social calendar. I know you didn't bring it this morning, so metaphorically, be flipping through it in your head. All right? Between now and, the end of September, do you have any invitations to go to anything? I mean, anything at all. All right. Ask yourself these couple of questions. Am I going to go get myself into some trouble? Okay, if not, go with the purpose. You have to ask yourself, am I going with a purpose? Please go with a purpose. Because our big adventure, at least for Christians, now other people say we're boring, I say we're awesome. But our adventure as Christians is that God may use us. Man, that's exciting. So as you're flipping through your social calendar and you note, I've been invited to, there's a cookout. I'm going to go enjoy lots of red meat. I'm going to have tons of potato chips. I'm going to laugh. We're going to play, what do you call that when you throw the bag, bean bag? I hate that game. Cornhole. Yeah, cornhole. It's weird. Anyway, we're going to play round after round of that. And now they do those slam ball things. What is that? Spike ball. Spike. I won't even remark on that. But anyway, I've watched it played. I'm gonna have a great time, and I'm gonna drink up all their Mountain Dew. Seems like have you noticed this? I shouldn't be saying all this, but anyway, have you noticed that when people get a cooler full of pop, that's the first thing that goes is Mountain Dew? People drink up all the Mountain Dew, and then they leave the Diet Coke in the bottom. Even those of us that should be drinking Diet Coke don't want it, you know. Anyway, you're thinking about all this. Wow, down south, we're going to throw horseshoes. And if you've got a pond, we'll bass fish. Okay, great. Have a good time, but think somewhere in there, God's going to use me. All right, it's a twofer. I'm going to have a great time, and God's going to use me. Think that way. Think that way. And go as long as you won't get yourself in big trouble. Okay? All right, I'm going to have some prayer for all of us. Lord Jesus, as we accept invitations of different kinds, we want to go. We're attending the great physician. And we want to be these kind of people as we're there, we're learning on the spot. Lord, we want to be pleasant people. We like to have a good time with the people that we're with, Lord, but we also want to make all the difference in their lives. Lord Jesus, use every one of us as we go out to different adventures, things we have been invited to. Use